Okay, thanks. The usual fake mallet. And hi, I'm Kurt Riegel, chairman of the Annapolis Transportation Board, and the April 19th meeting is hereby convened. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I think the agenda is short enough, and some of us have worked incompletely enough that it should go fairly quickly tonight. We're going to try a new procedure that the other boards and commissions have been using. Seems to work nicely. So if our Secretary Vince Harriman would call the roll, we will see who is here and who is not.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. Elizabeth Ozol.
She's trying to get on, but for the moment she's not here.
Okay, we'll give her a minute. Kurt is here. Elvia Thompson. Jessica Charles Allen. Charles Brooks. Kara Fleck-Plawinski.
I am here.
There you are. David DeQuinzio.
David is connected, but he's not visible or audible.
David, maybe raise your hand with the raise your hand feature just to confirm. Carol Kelly.
Here.
Oh, there you are. I'm here. John Purnell.
I'm here.
DeQuinzio is here.
DeQuinzio's here.
Yay.
Zoe Johnson.
Here.
And we have a vacant seat in Ward 3 and 2 at-large vacant seats. So not present, Elvia Thompson, Jessica Charles Allen, Charles Brooks, and we're waiting on confirmation for Elizabeth Dolezal.
Thanks very much. All right, the agenda has and the minutes have both been distributed. If there are no objections to our adopting the agenda, I will proceed, but if you have additions or corrections, please let me know. Hearing nothing, we go on to the minutes. Is there a motion that we adopt the minutes of the last meeting as distributed?
I move that we adopt the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. All those not in favor, raise your hand. All right, I will, the minutes are adopted. Not having the technical capability yet, and I will take this up with Hillary, we can't include members of the public, but I gather that some boards and commissions are already doing that. I think it's a desirable thing to do, and I will work it with her to try to see that that actually happens. We had a speaker lined up by Elvia from Montgomery County on the subject of electric transit vehicles, but there was a last-minute schedule conflict and we had to postpone it. John Purnell has graciously consented to give us his view as a new member of some of the transportation things that he's been involved in, and perhaps some of his desires, wishes, and priorities for our collective work for the future. So John, if you would proceed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kurt. I've got to do a little bit of techno work here to share my screen. Give me a moment. Ooh, I think that's it. Are you seeing what I'm sending?
Yes, indeed.
All right, great. Well, first of all, I'm great.
By the way, Elvia, for some reason we can't see or hear her, but she is watching us.
Okay. Sounds like an angel.
Somebody fixed it. I'm in now.
Ah, yay.
Oh, great. Yay. So Kurt, thank you for the very kind and last minute invitation on Friday to be the presenter today. I'll say a couple of things. First of all, this is a really random stream of consciousness set of thoughts. And by virtue of that, I'm sure I've left things out. In fact, I know of 2 things that I've already omitted walking home and thinking, oh crap, those should have been in there. And I would suggest that this is not any particular study or defined, opus work. It is really just a set of thoughts about that John brings to the board from his experience in transportation. So take that for what it's worth, which is about not even worth the price of a cup of coffee, because the price of a cup of coffee is far more expensive. I have about 18 slides. Kurt, how much time did you give me? 15 minutes? That's about right. So I'm going to try and
Indeed.
race through them, but I'm open to questions, and to the extent that you all want to talk, and we can stop and discuss these. So I kind of broke my thoughts up into increasing levels of mobility, put it that way, starting with parking where you're stopped, to local transportation, to regional transportation, to inner city transportation, and then pull together some conclusions at the end. So I hope that that covers the waterfront here, no pun intended. So I'll start with parking. I think my observation, and this is just my observations, is that they, at least in Ward 1, the parking has been impacted by the recovery zone outside dining. I don't think that's inappropriate. I think the mayor did some really creative forward thinking by getting us all street dining through the winter. And it amazed me the number of people that were outside dining in January in 25-degree weather. But we did it. The problem I foresee is that as we come upon the spring and summer, we're going to have more and more people downtown, and the parking space loss is going to be far more felt now than it was during the winter. So that's one thought. That is going to be exacerbated by the imminent demolition of the Hillman garage. I actually don't know when that's happening. Do you know, Kurt, when the demolition is scheduled?
No, I don't know that it is scheduled firmly.
So maybe that's further in the future than I think, but we talk about it in such a way that I think it's got to be coming up like tomorrow. The third impact is delivery vehicles. And because I've got the floor, I get a chance to talk about my pet peeves. And this picture is one of many that I've taken on Conduit Street, showing delivery vehicles parked improperly, facing the wrong way, in a no parking. There's not even a parking zone, it's a travel lane. And this happens all the time. And I was on a campaign pre-COVID. I would take pictures like this and I would call the company and I would send them the picture. I'd get the dispatcher on the phone and I'd say, you can't do this. And if you do this again, I'm going to report you. And that usually cleaned up a little behavior, but I cannot do this alone. And the problem is starting to occur again as the restaurants are picking up business. This problem of we don't have enough space for delivery trucks is continuing to get worse. And I actually watched this event occur once during St. Mary's drop-off at 7 something in the morning, whatever time their drop-off is. And I almost witnessed accidents of people trying to get around these trucks while all the moms were trying to drop their kids off. It was mayhem out there. So this is something I'd like you all to at least have in your brain, that we've got a problem with delivery trucks. And I'll tell you this, I did tell the mayor prior to being on the board, maybe it's why I'm on the board, that I thought we should program into the Hillman garage some space for trucks from 6 a.m. till noon to be, or maybe 11:30, to be able to pull in there, park, and deliver their stuff all over downtown Annapolis. And then at 11:30 or 11, that space would become parking spaces for regular parkers. And he liked the idea, but I do not have any clue as to whether it's made it into the Hillman garage plan. Sorry, I am unaware, and I would really like to hear, is parking an issue in any other ward besides Ward 1?
It's an issue in Ward 8, and it has at one point that I know of been an issue in Ward 5. It
Okay,
may be elsewhere. I'm not
that-
familiar.
that's outside my experience, but I really don't. I'm trying not to be Mr. Ward 1 here, and I think we have, as a city, a tendency to focus on Ward 1 to the exclusion of others. So I don't want to be that guy. So please help educate me on parking issues in other parts of the. Are they similar to the Ward 1 issues or different?
My personal observation for Ward 2 is that we have essentially no problem, and I'm actually somewhat mystified by the fact that we have residential parking restrictions on streets that have no residents. I don't quite understand that, but then I don't know the regs very well.
Ward 2 has sporadically been a problem in, isolated blocks, in part because of the growing restaurant prevalence and also larger office buildings, larger doctor's offices and such.
Yeah, there are several blocks in West Annapolis that are purely commercial with no residents, and yet only residents can park there. I don't quite understand that. Is there a
Okay.
rationale?
But
Lost
I don't
on
think
me.
it's good enough to know whether that was something that was adjudicated by the board, but it could have been in the history.
I would also say that Ward 2 has pretty heavily impacted parking issues in Homewood, Admiral Heights, and West Annapolis to a certain extent due to stadium events.
Oh, I hadn't
Indeed.
thought about that. But yeah, I'm sure you're right about that.
And major traffic congestion on a lot of weekends, and particularly in the fall.
Yep. I lived in Admiral Heights for a little bit, and I can certainly understand that. Parking
The
guidance.
surge congestion that is generated by Bay Bridge backups is
my
a
God,
contributor
yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, I'm on the Bay Bridge Reconstruction Advisory Board, and am pushing as hard as I can for something to flatten the surge peak. Pricing is one such mechanism, but there may be other mechanisms too. But I interrupted. Go ahead, John.
No. I said at the front end, this is open for interruption, dialogue, discussion.
Well, John, I'm going to interrupt you then.
Yeah, please.
My business, my nonprofit was in Ward 1 for the last 5 years. And I honestly don't know how the businesses can even keep going with the residential parking issues there. I've asked the city many times before I was ever on this board or anything, why can't the businesses have permits for parking during the time when the residents are supposed to be at work, like permits for like 9 to 5, like let's say 2 permits per business, something like that.
They've actually
for the
done that
employees.
on Conduit Street. All those cars parked on the left. They've blocked off all the metered parking there in the morning for trucks to deliver. It isn't enough, but it's a good, healthy start. I would completely agree with a program that says we need to have morning deliveries and free up as much space as we can to get all this food and liquor delivered by 11 o'clock in the morning, and then turn it over to the people that are going to consume it. That makes eminent sense to me. And I think it's probably appropriate for every ward. But in Ward 1, we still continue to have this kind of congestion problem. Parking guidance. I'm an IT guy, so I tend to see things through the lens of technology.
John?
Yeah.
Excuse me. I've had my hand up, but
I'm sorry for not seeing.
I was muted. That's okay. I was muted. I've had my problems getting in here. So, question. An observance of mine. I think your idea of parking trucks in Hillman or if say from God knows what hour until noon is not a bad idea, because you're right, it doesn't get heavily used except for events, when they were having events or whatever. But I don't picture trucks getting in there. I mean,
I
you
haven't
can't
seen the
even get a
design for the
van.
new garage, and here we have an opportunity.
I'm talking
the-
about the road. I'm talking about the road, not into the garage. I'm talking about getting in, can you imagine getting a truck around either corner into the garage? It's just not going to happen.
It's
So
a design
behind,
problem.
behind this, what is that truck? Saval truck is Gorman Street, which leads down to
That's right.
Hillman. And
Yes.
there is a designated truck delivery spot. It's only 2 city trucks long. You couldn't hold it. It would be this entire truck would hold it.
It's behind Chicken Roost.
Correct. And Acme. And that's good. We should have that, because that's exactly there. It's doing the right thing. But that proves that some trucks of the right size can make it up Gorman.
Or they come down Conduit and they back in, because I've seen them do it.
All I'm saying, and I'm going to end the observation here. We have an opportunity here with the Hillman garage being in blueprint to make a modification somehow to make this happen. I'm not sure it's achievable, but now is the time, because for the next 30 years, we're going to be stuck with whatever we build.
No, I agree. No, I'm not disputing that. I'm just picturing the roads
Yep.
coming into the Hillman garage, and maybe going into the Hillman garage isn't the thing. Maybe as it is now, enlarging around the Hillman garage instead. I don't know, but I don't think you're wrong.
I would encourage this committee, to speak up and say, can we consider the Hillman garage for this, how it will handle this function? And let's look, you're right, we have to look at it as a system of roads and buildings and levels. And you're absolutely right. No truck could make it up those ramps in the current Hillman garage. But that's what architects and engineers do a great job with if we give them the requirement. So I'd like to see this committee say to whoever is constructing that garage, are we constructing that garage? Did we set the requirements? So whoever did, we need to go to them and say, hey, could we pull this off? And from what Gavin told me, he'd favor it. He liked the idea when I broached it to him. I think it got me on this committee.
Should we get a presentation on the status of the garage project
Absolutely.
at some point? I think that might be a good thing to put on the agenda and take these things up. And then John, as on this item and then others that you will be presenting in a couple of minutes, let me just suggest that you keep in mind drafting things that we can mature into resolutions, which are our formal instrument of advice to the city.
I'm happy to do that. I'm pretty new to this committee, so I don't understand the rhythm of how it does its work. I'm learning that. And I also am a little bit at sea as to who owns this garage project. Is it not us? Should not it be us?
So let's get a presentation. Anna has always been involved in this,
okay,
and probably knows more than any of us. But
good.
We should get a presentation.
Yep.
So John, when you say us, do you mean the transportation board?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah. The transportation board hasn't historically been involved in any particular aspect of city dock redevelopment or the parking garage. There was a very large city dock action committee, and on that committee there was a transportation work group and a lot of stakeholders on various work groups as well. And throughout that, it was almost maybe over a year, maybe 2-year process to come up with a consensus plan. And the consensus plan had design guidelines and that were informed by different work groups. I co-chaired the resiliency work group, and Elvia was on that work group with me. And some of our design principles were then moved forward into the RFP and the set of requirements that were handed by the city to the contractor that was selected. And the same, I would say, with regard to the parking garage. But the city is really the lead for the project, the administration. But they are working very closely still with the City Dock Action Committee to ensure that the vision that that committee set forth is met by the design of both City Dock proper as well as the parking garage.
So I'm going to have to call the question on here and keep moving, or I'll never finish. But I totally agree getting a presentation on the parking garage and continuing to give these kinds of thoughts to them if we find them valuable. Next item was no smartphone guidance available for the parking. And I know this is kind of in the hopper. It seems to me unlikely that anybody is going to use an Annapolis parking app if it isn't tied to Google and Apple's map apps. That when you say, I want to go to Annapolis, that app should take you to do you want to find where to park? So my thought, and again, stream of consciousness here, could be right, could be wrong. I think we should go to Google and Apple and say, is there any way we can make parking part of your map app and steer people to available parking spaces while they've got us? Because once they're on their way, it's harder, especially if they're a single driver. They can't pick up their phone and navigate to the correct parking spot. They're driving, they can't do that. So if the app took you to the best available parking, I think that would be the best possible option.
That is so sensible. Do you know if this has been done in any other city?
No idea. This
Okay.
could be a groundbreaking idea.
It's been done 100 times, and there are plenty of apps that we could probably either switch to off of the current one or piggyback with. But yes, they're out there.
So now the critical thing we got to have, and I think we have it, is we've got to have the data of what parking, real-time data about parking availability. As long as we've got that, then we've got the thing to give to Google and Apple to say, here's how to get there. Here's where to go. When you get to Annapolis, here's where to go. And it could deliver information on the circulator. It could give information on the water taxi, on all kinds of transportation options that we have in our quiver. Okay, that was parking. If I make this done in 2 hours, Kurt, it's going to be a record.
So John, just if you want to take notes, Parking Panda, Spot Hero, those are the types of companies apps that will allow you to navigate to both parking garages and individual parking spots.
Vince, as I understood the suggestion, it was that the more commonly used universal apps like Google and so forth be integrated with these data so that you don't have to switch from app to app.
That's the trick. Once you put it into Google or the Android map app, it's almost automatic that it takes you to the right garage.
I got you.
Electric
Right.
vehicle drivers already have that. There are several apps that tell you where the charging stations are, including
There
in
we
our
go.
garages.
There we go.
Are
All
they,
right.
LV, are they integrated with Google?
Nope.
Yeah, that's going to come.
Okay. So local transportation. I've gone from still to moving, but not very far. And I'm going to cover these 4 topics as quickly as I can. Although I started with the one that's probably nearest and dearest to my heart, the circulator. I am a circulator rider. I ride it 5 to 10 times a week. The ridership is still too low. It was too low pre-COVID. There's a lot of issues. If I put these in order of quantity of riders, this group, I don't know, do any of you know that the kind of thing that happens on a weekday morning with the circulator, have you seen this? there will be 50 people waiting at the Westin to go to the courthouse because that's what Anne Arundel County told them to do. And there, it is impossible to get on the circulator until about 8:10. And what the drivers have learned to do is just do quick routes to the courthouse and handle this giant load because they start at 7:30. But I've been out there and they filled the bus 2 times full, 3 times full to get to the courthouse. Does Anne Arundel County pay us anything for this really nice service? That's a question that's on my mind. Because they are using it, let me tell you. And they're telling all the jurors to park over here in Park Place and take the circulator, and they're listening. Then after about 8:15, it dies off to nothing. And you wind up with, how did I have on my list here? Some restaurant where my guess is about 3%. I can probably name 6 regular riders on the circulator that work in downtown retail and restaurants. And some, like the tea shop, are really good about encouraging their employees to do it. And we've got some from Middleton's and other spots, you know the spots. But there is nowhere near, more than 3% of the people that are working downtown using this. So from that point of view, it's a fail. We had intended it for it to move employees to their workspace and free up parking downtown by putting them in inexpensive Park Place parking. And it isn't getting there. And we need to understand why and address that. The third category would be people like me, RPP residents, love it, use it infrequently, but we use it. And the last group are Westin visitors. And this is a very group that it can be huge. They can get overwhelmed if a large conference is in there and they all want to go downtown drinking. They'll use the circulator, and the Westin does steer them there. But that's kind of the makeup of what's going on the circulator. There are a lot of schedule issues. I don't know if you know this, but when we let the contract, there's no break for the drivers. And that's a DOT violation, by the way, folks. I don't put that on the slide, but you've got to give them breaks. So what you wind up with now, and now we've trimmed the schedule back to 8 p.m., which essentially wipes out the dinner crew. All the dinner employees can't use the circulator. So that's got to be put back to 11 p.m. again, as soon as we possibly can afford it. And the last thing is, during COVID, with the schools empty, they are now using the circulator to take kids from Clay Street to Bates to get their lunches, which is a good thing and a noble thing. But it means that from 11:45 to 12:45, there is no circulator, despite the fact of what it says on the website. There are some vagrancy issues. The circulator continues to suffer, especially in the winter, from homeless people who are seeking shelter and finding the bus to be a warm place to ride around in and sleep. And last, and I think the contract is probably coming to its end, isn't it, Kurt? The vehicles are old and incredibly noisy. All that equipment in the back for handling disabled people in wheelchairs, that it has a whole thing that swings out and they can come in, and there's a little lift gate and brings them in, is so noisy you can't even talk on the bus. And the last point about the circulator I'll make is that it is too large. It's so large it cannot go around State Circle. So it can't get to the patrons in Maryland Avenue, the patrons at Colonial Players, all the people that are coming out of the Naval Academy Gate 3. It can't reach those people because it's too large to get around State Circle. So I think as we approach the re-up of the circulator contract, there are probably a lot of things to think about and consider. And we should probably, that's probably the second recommendation. We probably need to latch on to whatever the renewal of that contract is about.
There are some other issues with the circulator. Okay, two issues I'm going to bring up. One, I will never ride that circulator with those tinted windows. You can't see in there. I don't feel safe in that thing.
Okay.
Secondly, the new vehicles that are bought for this purpose should be smaller, as you say, and they should also be electric. There is no reason for this city to continue to put crud into the atmosphere with these buses. And third, I said two, but third, many times I have plugged my car in over at Maryland Hall and then walked down to State Circle where my office was. I could walk there faster than waiting for a circulator. They don't run often enough.
They run ostensibly every 20 minutes.
No, they don't.
But they don't. And they don't for all the reasons I listed here.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, today I finished up my work at 6:10 in the afternoon. The circulator's supposed to run its schedule at 6:10. They didn't go till 6:30. So what was she doing from 6:10 to 6:30? I don't know.
Well, the big thing is the electrifying this kind of ride. Okay, so it's more expensive in the beginning, but the savings are in the long run because the maintenance on electric vehicles is much less.
Well,
And
they're spending a ton on maintenance on these vehicles. I'll tell you
Exactly.
right now.
Exactly. So not only does it not make sense from a cost purpose, expense, but also the environment. And
So
I would not, they've got to be electric. We've got to stop polluting the air. What kind of message does that send about this town?
So we need to latch onto the circulator contract and make sure that goes the way we want it to go. Demand electric vehicles, demand smaller vehicles. We need to set a schedule that meets DOT regs and is achievable. And then we got to hold them to it because we got a lot of drivers who do not think the schedule matters. Now there's days like June week, graduation day. It's a disaster for the circulator. It takes it 45 minutes to make its route. And that's just reality. I get that. But most days, I don't know why they skip their 20-minute drive. Part of it is they don't have enough people, so they don't think it's worth it. But I think we're going to have some driver retraining to do on this exact front to get them to stick to the schedule. Because if you want to know what a good transit system looks like, look at the Japanese. The trains run on the minute, and we're not, and we need to. Other comments? Circulator is always a hot issue.
Yeah, I think the circulator is unexploited, and I'm very much supportive of some of the suggestions you've made.
I want to talk about city bus service. I still think city bus service, the ridership seems too low. Somebody said last month we have empty buses riding around, and I think that's the general perception. And I would point out that every citizen of Annapolis sees that and asks, why are we running empty buses around town? I think in general, the buses are perceived as unattractive. The routes are confusing. How many of you all take the city bus?
Very
I've taken
familiar with the bus.
Oh yeah?
Oh,
So
yes.
you probably know the routes and have learned the routes, but I'm not kidding you. I've sat there several times going, well, maybe I can take the city bus. And I have spent 15 minutes trying to figure out where is the bus? Which bus should I take? What is its schedule? Because there is no app for it. So it is, I think it needs to kind of, it needs a facelift as well in terms of being a modern, efficient, clean, friendly transportation mode. I love the idea of doing it for free. If we do that, I think we're going to wind up just having to figure out, well, what does that mean to the circulator? So maybe we combine the two. I don't know. Is there Wi-Fi on board? I don't know, of the buses.
I don't know. Kwaku probably does. I'm not
Kwaku,
sure.
is there?
I don't think so. For
No,
some
no
reason, I don't
Wi-Fi.
think so.
Yeah. So why not? This is the digital age. Every millennial has 2 smartphones and a tablet. So we should be offering Wi-Fi on our buses. Again, stream of consciousness here, folks. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just calling this stuff out. But I'm wondering why there isn't Wi-Fi. I'm wondering why there isn't Wi-Fi on the circulator. And it should be, and Kwaku, you may have done this. I don't know whether it is or not coordinated with the 70, the MTA 70 in the circulator, but it should be. so that you can take a ride from anywhere in Annapolis and get to, let's say, Church and West at the same time or a minute before the 70 comes. That's what Baltimore did with Baltimore Link, is it tried to clean up a lot of that coordination.
And again, they should be electric.
All righty.
In terms of MTA, you may notice that MTA developed its own schedule. They don't seek any input from any of the local jurisdiction unless it is a transfer point. So right from the beginning of planning, there is no relationship between MTA and other local transit systems. So that is an issue.
That is an issue. If we're going to have an integrated regional transportation system, it starts with coordinating all these systems. And the other one I left out here, by the way, the two things I left out, I'll admit right now. I left out Anne Arundel County's bus system, which I've only just saw on the way home and said, oh my God, they have one too. And I left out regular automobile traffic. And the second one is because I don't have any expertise in regular automobile traffic. Carol, I know you've been carrying the standard for Forest Drive beautifully for a while, but I don't know anything about how to talk about that or the mathematics of that or all the things that go in there. So please, I apologize for leaving those two things out. But I agree with you, Kwaku. Well, I don't agree with you in this sense. I agree that we've been left out of the process. I think that's unacceptable. I think we need to be in conversation with both the county and the state, saying we need to coordinate our schedules so that we do the best thing for our common citizen.
It's not that we've been left out, but this is an opportunity to get in.
Okay.
You know, it's telling that you're titling this slide local transportation, and to a large extent that has been in place timelessly in Annapolis. It is local transportation, and I think we're at a critical point right now in terms of governments and money and thinking, and people like you and others, where it can become more than local, and therefore hopefully all of these things you're presenting as genuine problems will start to be looked at in a way that can be handled. It's local transportation in a town that does not have much money.
We are all Annapolitans, and we're looking at this through the lens of an Annapolis resident. But the elephant in the room, of course, is whether a true regional system is not something that would serve us all better.
It's going to get worse in future slides, so hang on. So the other local transportation thing I talked about is what I call the TNCs, or what the industry calls the TNCs, the transportation network companies. I've noticed the driver volume has really dropped in COVID. It is very hard to get an Uber or a Lyft. Pre-COVID, you could get one in 2 or 3 minutes. They all sort of hung around downtown and they were there. Maybe they're all doing Uber Eats now. I don't know what they're doing in DoorDash, but the last 3 times I've gone to get an Uber or a Lyft, it's been like a 20-minute wait. And they came from Arnold or somewhere bizarre like that. That's not right. So what's happening here? I've sort of dug into this a little bit. There's a driver equity problem in the industry. And California and Seattle are both struggling. California dealt with it, and Seattle's dealing with it by essentially setting living wage requirements for TNC drivers, and that's driving costs up and making it difficult for them to collect business. There is a tremendous demand for drivers in Uber and Lyft. And the other thing that I noted in here is more and more destinations are charging fees for going there. And then the number one sources that are airports. And the chart I put on the right, I apologize for moving it around and not adjusting the title, came from a study by Phoenix Airport that shows that the average airport charges $5 to drop somebody off. Honestly, why is Baltimore Washington Airport more attractive than Annapolis? Why don't we charge $5 to Uber to drop somebody in the Annapolis city limits? Did I just say heresy?
John, this is not related to the $5 fee, but one other issue to consider related to COVID is that drivers just may not feel comfortable picking up folks during a pandemic if they don't know if that person is positive or how cautious that person's being. I think that could probably also be attributed or be a factor in why
Oh, yeah.
driver volume has severely been impacted by the pandemic. I didn't see that listed here and I didn't hear you mention it. And I
It was
thought
sort of
I'd-
my first bullet, that the driver volume has been impacted by COVID. And that was my point, is that,
Okay,
yeah, I think COVID has upset so many things. I mean, the whole TNC
right.
thing was
Right.
on this enormous trajectory, and then it hit a wall with COVID.
Right.
And now we're watching the shattered car wreck of an Uber collision with the wall of COVID.
Robert Eads ran a taxi company and he's no longer with us because of COVID.
I can believe that. And does that mean that this is permanent?
I
Are
think
we
it's going to take some time for folks to feel comfortable doing ride share and potentially riding transit. I mean, I know we're just forecasting, but even after folks are vaccinated, I don't know how excited people will be to get into, not speaking for our transit system per se, but others, a crowded metro, a crowded subway. People just may not feel comfortable with that, and it may take some time to recover.
So that would suggest that we use this period of slack to retool and make ourselves ready for the future.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And perhaps there are some granting opportunities that would help with that. And also as commutes change, transit systems need to adapt to the new ways that people are commuting. If it's not during the rush hour as we used to know it prior to COVID. So I agree with you there.
I don't know if there'll be a rush hour in
I know,
like
right?
10 years. It'd be kind of cool if there
John?
wasn't. Huh?
John,
Yeah, Beth.
actually, I do think, I'm trying to think back to the transportation board previous to this transportation board. Carol, doesn't Annapolis collect a 25-cent fee for every Uber and well, we don't have Lyft. Yes, we do. Okay, every Uber or Lyft pickup in Annapolis? Because I remember
I don't know that. Kwaku might know that.
Yeah, because I remember when it all, this all was a new thing, and they were trying to regulate and all this stuff. And one of the things they came up with was that Annapolis would get 25 cents for everyone, and we're like 25 cents, but I thought that's what they got. Kwaku?
Yes, we don't have a direct fee for the Uber and Lyft. What I know is that the state has a system in place. I don't know how they do collect the money, but the state at the end of the fiscal year actually gets money from these TNCs, and then they do allocate the money or some of the money to the local transit agencies or to the municipalities. I know that City of Annapolis does get some TNC money every year. It varies though. How much the state collects, I have no idea. How much is allocated, or how does the state determine how much funding needs to go to a specific municipality? Also, I don't know, but I do know that the city does receive some of the fees that the state collects every year.
I know exactly how the airports collect this fee. And I know I was there when the Uber was fighting with San Francisco over whether they could be charged at all, and how they worked it out with, it's basically a policy of geofencing the city. And we could geofence our city limits, and we could know it, and I believe we could collect it. I don't know if we get as many Uber, Lyfts, pickups and drop-offs as BWI. I guess we don't, but I don't think we're less than 10% of it. So there's big money here. I'm going to move on in the interest of time and not keeping you guys here till midnight. Biking, my observation was, and this is the bike map down here. On the right is our 2011 bike plan, and on the left is our current bike map. So we're not there yet, folks, right? It is still segmented, disjointed biking. And I like to ride. I find my ride to work to be a little dangerous because I wind up going down. If you notice, here's downtown Annapolis with virtually no dedicated bike paths. There are some, I think the word is sharrows, where the bike lane is marked off. There's one on Church Circle, I know that. So I don't know much about bike and bike politics and how to set this plan. And I know the mayor's trying to put one across Rail Boulevard, right? Somewhere over here around the Navy Stadium. Isn't that right?
There's, yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, but it will be using the Poplar Trail plus other segments along Poplar
There's
Street.
the Poplar Trail.
Yeah.
So are we moving in the right direction? Yes. Are we moving there too slowly? Yes. But I would love to see a Bike Annapolis program work, and I'd love to work on one if we have one. The water, you know, the thing that strikes me about water and local transportation is that we're a waterfront town. We're about the water. I actually think the water taxi is terrific because it is local transportation, any way you want to call it. But we have no ferries, and there's no way to really move around in a water taxi model unless you own your own boat. So that's an area where, you know, I think the water could be more exploited if we can. I'm not sure we could put a ferry system in that would work.
John,
And-
Gavin's working on that, and
Is
it
he?
might be nice to ask him to tell us about it. It's in his thoughts are still, you know, just big ideas, but he is working on a ferry system.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. I would love to be able to ferry over to Rock Hall for dinner. That would be just not Rock Hall, St. Michael's or something. That
Are
would
you
be
thinking
really
of
cool.
a ferry of something that carries people or cars or both?
Most ferries have to carry both in this day and
He's
age.
thinking of that. He's also thinking that if that doesn't work, then that they could at least carry bicycles.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for him. Works, you know, I've got like 15 minutes that he talked to me about it. That's all I know.
So we probably need to lock into that initiative and see if we can help. But I think exploiting our waterfrontness is what makes us special and good. Okay, regional. Now I'm getting a little further out there. So I took a look at, you know, what are our regional transportation options? And I was pleased to see this map from the MTA that shows that Baltimore cares about Annapolis because we are clearly the far-flung spur for the MTA. And the 70 bus, I think, does fairly well. Has anybody measured the ridership on that? Kwaku, do you know anything about that?
Well, unless we ask MTA, we don't get any ridership data from MTA buses at all.
I've taken it up to the college. I actually, I'll tell you a story. If we had a deal with my kids that if they were late for carpool, they had to take the bus, and we would put them on the it wasn't the 70, it was the 14 at that time, and they had to ride the bus to Severn. And we made my daughter Mary do that once, and it was like a Friday, and that Friday night there was some cocktail party of all the Severn parents. We were rock stars because we put our kid on the bus. Nobody could believe we would put our kid on the bus. And I'm like, it was good for them. They should see what happens when they miss the carpool. That's life in the real world. You take the bus. So I love the 70. I'm a big fan of the 70. And I'd like to see as much as we can to coordinate with MTA. There are a fair amount of commuter things, I guess you know about. I can't figure out whether it's MTA, Coach, or Dillon's. It all seems to be the same thing. But the two buses are the 210 and the 215 that have a good number of stops. And And I would say the MTA buses are pretty new and clean. I'm impressed with them. And integrated to the light rail. There is a trip planner, but they don't have any kind of mobile app for finding your bus, that kind of stuff. And I did pick out their pretty recent October 2020. In fact, this MDOT master plan I've downloaded, Kurt, and I want to load it to our Google Drive or wherever we're collecting stuff.
Good.
Because MDOT's master plan talks a lot about how to make it fiscally sustainable and optimizing the existing services and improving connectivity. And those are all, in my concern, our watchwords for what we should be doing with the MTA. WMATA, not so good. There is nothing east of Largo. We don't even exist in their world. And we're relying entirely on the MTA Coach Dillon's, these two buses, the 220 and the 230, to handle the commuters. There is nothing for the non-commuters. This is kind of a weak spot, I think, if we're going to live in the world of Baltimore and Washington, this is an area for improvement, is to get some better access, not having to get in your car and drive down 50. Do we want to go to the point where we want the rail to come out to us? I've heard every story in the world about we don't, and unsavory people and this, that, and the other thing. At the end of the day, I think I can't even tell you yet whether we should do that or not, but it's clearly on our radar.
You know what? That's the same argument they made in Georgetown when they were putting in the metro. And now they've got nothing. They've got no public transportation there.
Right. So this is a gap, and it's a gap that would normally be filled by rail. I did find out, Kurt, based on our conversation, the current target date for this section of the Silver Line to Dulles is July 2022. And honestly, I think that represents an opportunity for Annapolitans to be able to get to Dulles for international flights. And that's $125, $130 one-way Uber or taxi ride.
Yeah. If we had a connection to either the Silver or the Orange line, we would be way ahead.
Way ahead. So that needs to kind of be in our thinking cap. All right, moving along here. Oops, what did I just do? So now let's talk intercity transportation. I'll start now. I do a lot of work at the airport, so I know, and I fly a lot, so I know this. I was a little shocked that the prices are up to about $60 a trip, plus tip. So that makes it, if you give a 20% tip, that makes it $72, $75. For being the state capital, that is insulting. All right, we should have ready access to our airport for our state representatives. And I just sort of don't understand this. There are no rail options, as we know. So honestly, I think it's hard to get to the airport. It's hard to get the intercity travel from Annapolis. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't think so. So I don't think this is anything that'll fix in the near term, but it's something we should be keeping our eye on.
Santa Fe is the state capital of New Mexico, and Albuquerque is the big airport. They have a train line that runs from the airport to Santa Fe. I think it's over 60 miles away.
Yep. I've driven that. Albuquerque is one of my airports.
By the way, Annapolis is the only state capital in the United States that does not have rail service.
Really?
Yes.
I wanted to look that up when I was doing this. I didn't have enough time, but I felt like maybe we're the only one, and maybe
we are.
We are. Isn't that embarrassing? That's just a travesty.
Unless something's happened in the last few years, and another state capital has lost theirs, but I doubt that.
And we have an excellent, we have the best part of the Amtrak system right there at the airport, and it's got the same issues. We can't get there but pay these $60 prices. I mean, really, you look at this, you could pay as much to get to BWI rail station as you would to get to New York on Amtrak.
There has been an occasion, a period in Annapolis when you could get there for $10. When we did have a focus and we had success with a private public system, Mr. Young's transportation service that took
Right.
people to, and that was a model for the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about and arranging now and into the immediate future.
So here's my slide. This is Greyhound's bus route, and look how orphaned we are. We're like right in the middle of all this bus traffic, and you can't get to the bus lines, but go to downtown Baltimore or downtown Washington. I did learn today, I was stunned. Did you all know that Megabus was operating out of the Harry Truman Parkway?
I know that.
No,
I go to New York on that bus.
no,
Is it
I
still
didn't.
run?
Yeah.
I haven't gone anywhere for a year.
I think
But
it
I went
died
to
in
New York
COVID.
on the Megabus from Annapolis 3 times before
They
COVID.
announced it in 18, and I think COVID probably killed it.
But it's relevant. I don't want to personalize this too much, but it's relevant to the fact that I could go to see family in New York because I live in Parole, and I was just a few blocks away from the Harry Truman stop for getting to New York City. But that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing, if we use our imaginations and we speak to the sort of things that you're talking about tonight, John, it is John, right?
It is John. Thank you.
That, you know, it's not a blank canvas right now for the Transportation Board. And I'm probably going to continue to remind you of the failed masterpiece that has been in place. But we sure can do things now that will be equivalent to me, a person of very limited means and no car, going from Riva Road to Manhattan.
I have a daughter in Brooklyn. I would take this in a heartbeat, and more than I would take it in a heartbeat, I would put her on it in a heartbeat. I mean, I love going on the Amtrak with Claire, but this would be phenomenal if I wanted to come home for a weekend. That's $39 instead of $200. Water transportation, as far as I know, the only intercity water transportation is the Port of Baltimore. Am I wrong about that?
Say that again,
The
John.
only intercity water transportation is the Port of Baltimore cruise lines.
I think that's
There
right.
isn't, there's no
Yeah.
ferry out of Rock Hall anymore, right? Certainly doesn't come to Annapolis if it is.
Does Baltimore have a ferry?
Not to my knowledge.
No. So, okay. So they have cruises. Yeah.
Cruise lines is it. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to even count that because that's like its own, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, again, I think there's an opportunity for us to exploit our waterness. So conclusions, I had a whole bunch of conclusions, and you guys have done an excellent job of piping in other ones. But this is the list that I came up with. So thank you incredibly much for the opportunity to talk to you. I feel very privileged to do that, and I'm a newbie on the committee. I got a lot to learn, but I can't wait to do it.
Our thanks go to you, John. This is a wonderful, a comprehensive look at a whole bunch of things. And
took me
I
longer
think,
than I had on my agenda,
yeah,
sorry.
you went way over time, and I think that's fine in this case. But I will go back to the agenda, and I think it's something that we can do fairly quickly. I'm not aware of any legislation which is before us. Is anybody else? The only thing that I will mention very quickly is, actually, I'll wait until we do the around the table. Kara, could we turn to you for anything on the survey that you had discussed before? And I see Eric is in the background.
Yes, so I think that my update really might happen during this meeting. After last month's meeting, some of us met with Eric and we talked a bit about outreach to the public. And he had mentioned that he would perhaps speak with us about how we could be of help. And I emailed him, I guess it was either the other day or this morning, following up what we can do, if we should talk more. And he mentioned that he would be at today's meeting, which was convenient. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, what I expressed to Kara is that we're moving towards issuing draft goals and metrics and recommended actions for the comprehensive plan, and obviously for the transportation chapter. We don't want to issue a sort of like the typical survey that we would do where we're trying to get people's priorities. What we would love to have is some help getting transit users in particular to know that we're issuing this work and that we need their input. And really, basically, the people who rely on transit or other means of transportation other than personal vehicles. I mean, I think that would be an incredible benefit, because we're going to be issuing this draft work at the end of May. It's going to be online. We're open to other ideas for how to share the work, but it's essentially it's going to be a presentation or a document as well as kind of a website. So that's going to be how we'll share it. And we'd benefit from any ideas you guys have. I mean, I think that you'll see that we have quite a few goals and recommendations related to transit use and active transportation and lots of ideas that are very location based. So I'm hopeful that we're hitting all of your priorities. I just, if I could spend another couple minutes just giving you a general update, I'd be happy to do that on the comprehensive plan. Or is that a separate agenda item? I feel like there was something on the agenda related to comprehensive plan, but
I think we did go over time, but if you can succinctly give us a status report, it would be wonderful.
Well, all I wanted to say is that I really appreciated John's presentation, actually, because it gave me some additional insight, particularly on the circulator and how that's working or not working. But I did want to say that today the city issued an RFP for bikeways design work on what we're calling priority connectors. And this is a series of priority segments, generally going from north to south. One segment is the missing gap between the Navy Bridge and King George Street. And that we're not really going to be spending a lot of time through this RFP on that, but when we submitted the application for grant funding, it was a high priority, and our understanding is the state is really making a high priority of that at this point. It's their roadway, and they're working with the Navy on that right of way to ensure that we have bike facilities there. But then the next segment is looking at feasibility cutting across St. John's College to Rowell Boulevard and Calvert Street. That is a segment that has been talked about for a while. Essentially, we're trying to get folks from, if you think about the big picture, B&A Trail to downtown Annapolis, and recognizing that we're pretty constrained on King George Street. St. John's College has stepped up and agreed to be a partner on this, and we're going to be doing some outreach to their community to see if there's any feasibility in getting from King George Street across their campus where there's an existing trail along the waterfront, and then either going under Rowell Boulevard to the cemetery, or just bringing people up onto Bloomsbury and then cutting across Rowell Boulevard at the street level. then we're looking at that, what we call the Inner Wee, which is the eastern extension of Poplar Trail, otherwise known as the service road behind the Graduate Hotel, which is already pretty well used, but it's not really formalized as a trail. So that's a pretty high priority. And then we're looking at trail connections from there to Spa Creek, the existing Spa Creek Trail. And we're looking at adding a trailhead at Ceremony Coffee, has been talked about for a while. So that's going to become kind of a model kind of a bikeways trailhead within the system. And so all these segments are part of the current RFP that's just got issued today. I'm excited to see the firms that submit proposals for it, and we plan to be underway in June, I'm hoping.
Eric, is
I'm
the
also
other
gonna
end of
run a
Poplar?
shared micro mobility RFP. They would get our bike share. Yeah, so that is actually being worked on right now through, some of you may be aware of this, that the county is doing a feasibility study for the western extension of the Poplar Trail. And that is,
is that
supposed to
not
wrap up.
part of the city thing? I was thinking of the portion which goes through the canyon under the power lines. Is that in the city?
It is in the city. Unfortunately, it was done. We got a grant last year for that, and the county put up the matching funds for it. So they've been leading the feasibility study on that. And, the city is really advocating they're looking at a few options for how to extend the Poplar Trail to what they call the South Shore Trail. It's essentially the shared use path that runs along Route 2 and through the medical center. And the city is really advocating to essentially continue the Poplar Trail along the old railroad right of way that continues at Admiral Drive all the way to Gibraltar. But one of the alternatives would just be to improve the connection along Admiral Drive to Jennifer Road. City staff perspective and a lot of other advocates don't feel like that would be as transformative as a bike connection, as essentially continuing parallel with West Street and connecting to all the businesses and communities along that stretch. But there are a lot of utilities that we have to navigate around there as well. So
Eric, is Bike AAA involved at all?
Yeah, they're very involved, and I mean they're a strong advocate for this West Street alternative that would essentially transform West Street into kind of
that's certainly appealing to me.
Bike ped corridor for a lot of people at one time imagining that, but the county just completed their parole mobility study. They are advocating for it. I think it's kind of hard to imagine a transformed parole area without tackling West Street. That seems to be it's the gateway into Annapolis. We've been talking about for a long time that it needs a road diet to some extent. It needs kind of we need to reappropriate the right of way to create a safer corridor. And long story short, we've been advocating for this alternative through that feasibility study that would ultimately kind of follow West Street. And we're trying to submit for the next round of grants to advance that segment. So that would be a transportation alternatives program grant.
I think that would be a wonderful point at which to initiate a county-city cooperation. My reading of all of the documents from the county, the parole documents, the growth documents, the transportation documents, I've been immersed in them for weeks now. It tells me that this is this could happen. And the multimodal center would be at Parole and Route 2. And it would be, right sitting in the middle of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, and West Street and beyond. And so I hope that the city will not lose this opportunity. I'm sorry to present it as such a dream-based thing at this point, but I, particularly from reading those documents, the county documents, it doesn't seem like it's a dream to them at this point. So the city of Annapolis needs to get with it, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we are. I think we have a good relationship with the county. I think it's anytime we're dealing with a state road, it adds a level of complexity that, there's all these other interests at play and
but
so
it's
that-
also
that, in
adding
my
money
view, is
at
kind of
this
the-
point. I mean, this is the point at which
Yeah,
the money is going.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a huge priority for us, and I had to submit a memo. Essentially, the current feasibility study did not seem to be taking into account all of the potential benefits of doing that. It seemed to be only looking at the path of least resistance, and so I had to submit a memo that kind of looked at, from a comprehensive planning perspective, the opportunity for this to be a catalyst for surrounding communities. And, I hope that resonated for the folks working on the study. But the one point that John made, you kind of going back to the other end of the Poplar Trail, the part closer to downtown, John made the observation that when you look at that bike network map, there's really no connection, really prominent connections in and out of downtown or the historic district. It's all share roads essentially. And we're planning to submit for another grant that this would be a really big venture, kind of building on the city dock and Hillman Garage project. We want to seek funding that will enable us to essentially complete that eastern extension of the Poplar Trail, the construction of it. We don't have the money for that currently. But essentially build the bike connections into downtown that should be there, and so it's that connection across through St. John's, ideally, if that's feasible. It's potentially transforming some of the sharrows into dedicated lanes that might be buffered, or but we've been thinking about it as this bike to boat idea, where you have the National Park Service investing a lot of money into this city dock being a gateway for their renewed Chesapeake Gateways program. We're taking parking away from the city dock and moving into Hillman Garage. But we're not really solving the issue of getting people down there, by bike and pedestrian means, So this would be a way of augmenting that city dock project and saying, hey, there's a bigger initiative here to sort of pull all our bike connections into downtown. And so it would be a planning and design funding grant that would allow us to really, and construction for the Poplar Trail extension. But so we're still trying to figure out the exact scope of it, but that's the other big thing I just wanted to update you on. So I know I'm kind of sharing a lot of stuff, but there's a lot going on, and I appreciate the focus that you all have on all these things. So
Eric, thank you for the update. I appreciate it very much. The clock on the wall is a tyrant, and if you are all willing, I will push on to the rest of the agenda. We are there's an item on that you've covered some of this already, the Annapolis Comprehensive Plan. And I throw open the floor to both David DeQuincio and Carol Kelly for any additional remarks that you would like to make on the status of the comprehensive plan and your involvement in it.
I'll only underline what I said earlier, that both in my comprehension, my reading of the comprehensive plan and the county documents, that this is the time for searching for partnership solutions to transportation problems in Annapolis. And I hope that the comprehensive plan does that. Obviously, it can't do it to the extent that the county can, which has created Bibles that seem to be taking weeks for me to read, but we can be a part of it, I hope.
Good. David, are you there? I know you were you had volunteered to be our ambassador toward the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't really have much of an update on that. I would appreciate though if Eric, if you could reach out to me separately, maybe after, at some point, maybe later this week. The main thing I think is a bit of low-hanging fruit that we could all work on is to use this as an opportunity to attack, if you will, the whole level of service concept, which I think I'm not alone in thinking that has not served the city well, because it's really not an urban metric. It's a metric that is applicable more to arterial road performance, and that's the last thing you want in a historic district, certainly, and it's not really suitable. So lots of jurisdictions in places, in lots of different places across the country are moving away from it. They're making it either voluntary or going even further and restricting its use. So I don't want to take up time now. I know it's late, but I would welcome a conversation with you, Eric, about that specific issue and how we might address it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to follow up with you, David. And Sally Nash, our planning and zoning director, has actually been taking more of the lead on revising the policy for our adequate public facilities ordinance that would advance us sort of somewhat past the level to standard level of service metric and integrate with bike and pedestrian safety using the level of stress standard. So I admit I'm not. It's somewhat it's a lot to go into. I mean, I'll go into after when I follow up with you and catch you up.
Okay, thanks, Dave and Eric. Let's now go around the table fairly quickly with remarks that each of us may care to make on things we've been involved in. Let me just tell you where we are on the bicycle sidewalk thing. We are well positioned now for the next legislature, state legislature, to reverse this sidewalk default. Annapolis is now in good shape. The county, through both the Bicycle Commission and through the Transportation Commission, have acted nicely with respect to advice on their own ordinances. And I expect them very soon to take up the issue of us all speaking with a unified voice to the state legislature for the next session of the legislature, so that we can change this default. So that's where we are on that. I plead non-performance on the subject of transit, which Beth and I have still on our agenda, and I hope that we can work with others of you. And that's really all I have to say at this point. So let's move on to Beth.
Yes, Kurt and I need to pick up on what we're responsible for and are very interested in. It's just life overtakes us sometimes. But I did, it was about a week and a half ago, I did do a webinar on Comet, which it's a Uber, well, actually, it's a rideshare kind of on-demand system that Columbia, South Carolina is doing. And it's a transit partnership, and they use Uber and Lyft for certain things. And they paid for this by their sales tax. What I didn't get was, did they raise the sales tax? Did they add like 1 cent to their sales tax? Just how did they all of a sudden decide to use the sales tax to pay for this service? Now, Columbia does have like 136 buses, so it's just a slight bit larger than Annapolis. They also service 2 counties, at least parts of 2 counties. And what they did is they geo-fenced in their service area. And within that, they've started 2 programs with the on-demand. One is what they call a night program, which they bring riders after a certain time. And I can't remember exactly what time, and I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. But that a person who works late can call and get this Uber ride or Lyft ride from their place of business, either to their home or to a bus stop where they can pick up a bus. But it has to be within this geo-fenced area that they have created. And these, by the way, are subsidized tickets. They were subsidizing $5, now they subsidize $8. The other one is a market program where underserved communities can take an Uber, Lyft to a market that is in that geo-fenced area and provides fresh fruits and vegetables and meats. They can't be any market, they have to provide those things. They get 2 rides, round trip rides a week to these markets. So, and this has proven very successful for them. They're looking at expanding it to eventually be a free bus ridership. So anyway, they did a pilot first. It was good. Now they've expanded it. They work with employers, the federal and state agencies to determine parameters and how to do it. They also have a disabilities and seniors program that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's called PUP, P-U-P, PUP. It's just a pickup program. That's what it's called PUP. And that they also run and has been used very well. And that's it. It was interesting.
So this sounds very much like a realization of the presentation that Arjan Fernandel made to us.
Yes, it certainly is similar. I mean, his was conception. This one actually does it. I think that this is one of the first, if not the first, program in the United States, because they mentioned that other cities had come to them and looked at what they're doing and trying to replicate. So it certainly has been quite successful for them.
If you remember, when we discussed this topic after Aaron's presentation, Arjan's presentation, I suggested that and I was getting the suggestion from a meeting that had occurred between Eric and the city, that the transportation board undertake, a resolution, I guess it would be, to suggest just such an arrangement in Annapolis, And this clarifies.
Well,
I hope,
you have-
for the
But you have
members.
to you have to know a lot about it before you start making suggestions that it
But, well,
works.
we'd only have to make a resolution. We wouldn't have to implement the program.
No, but even to make a resolution, you got to feel like it's a good thing. So you got to know, have
You've-
some
you've been
background.
convincing tonight, Beth.
Yeah, but anyway, what they do though is by geofencing, they realize they leave a lot of people out, but they cannot go into real rural areas. They just don't have that kind of money, and they just can't do it. Many of the rides also only go from someone's home to a bus stop, and rather than to 15 miles somewhere. They may take a mile or two or 3 or 4 to a bus stop, but it is in this geofenced area. And so I do have their name. I do have the name of the Uber woman who she promised she would send the slideshow around. I haven't received it yet.
Okay, could I suggest, Beth, that if you have any follow-up material of that time, that you just send it to me and I'll get it into the minutes. I'm feeling the pressure of time, and I know Kara has to move on. Thank you for attending. Do you have anything to say before you depart, Kara?
Eric, I heard you say that you were interested in just getting some ideas as to ways we could reach transit riders. So for this group here, I'm going to put together a Google document that I can share with the group that's in our transportation board drive, where we can pull together those suggestions and perhaps share them with you, Eric. The other thing is, you mentioned there's an RFP out for a micromobility share, and I'm interested in the electric scooter component of that, because I know so many of those shares, like that's just what comes with the share, because that's the moneymaker. So I'm interested in what plans are for policy around where electric scooters should be operated. So I will shoot you an email there.
Yeah, that RFP is really in the draft stage right now.
Yeah, okay.
It won't be issued for a couple more months.
Okay.
It's got a lot of vetting, and yeah, I'd be happy to talk more about that with you. But
Okay.
And
great.
I'd like to welcome Alderwoman Tierney. I know you had a conflicting meeting tonight, but it's nice to see you here.
Yeah, and it's so good to see Eric here talking to you guys. That's great. I'm sure he's tickled, and I'm glad you talked. My only question was going to be the status of the bicycle share. So, and well, yeah, that'd be fun. Scooters, scooters on Main Street. But
Great.
thank you. I don't want to delay you any further.
Carol, have you said what you need?
Pretty much so. You can see that there is a reason to my madness of reading all of these county documents, because I will urge us to take them as a group and to see ways in which we can urge the city to cooperate with transportation initiatives.
Great. Next, we have David DeQuinzio, and following him, Elvia.
No further comments from me, thanks.
Okay, Elvia.
Nope, nothing else.
All right, John, you've had your time.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to even say a word. So thank you again.
Yes, indeed. Vince, thanks so much for not only attending but taking on this chore for us. What's up? Muting. You are muted.
Yeah, no updates from me today.
Okay. And Zoe, and we have to put you earlier in the rotation. Your the first letter of your first name puts you in the wrong place.
I don't mind going last. Let's see. The city has selected the firm that'll be working on the contract to do design for intelligent transportation signals on a number of signals throughout the city. Those are going to help greatly with congestion and evacuation response. So I'm really looking forward to that project, and it'll be moving forward soon. I believe we're still working on the contract, but they have selected the firm. And I think it was John or no, maybe it was Eric mentioned that state road right-of-way issues are extremely complicated. And if you add in federal road right-of-way issues or federal roads, it probably makes them even doubly more complicated. So we are continuing to work with both State Highway and Anne Arundel County on looking at the bike feasibility plans that SHA already developed for that segment of roadway from the Naval Academy Bridge to King George Street out to Taylor and, down towards the King George Street Bridge. We have to get a sense of how, which alternative's the best fit and how it would impact the existing road right of way and how much road right of way would need to be acquired from the Navy to undertake that project. So it's my understanding the county, it is a huge priority for the county, and they are looking at some funding in their upcoming budget that could support the next level of design. So Eric, I'm interested in taking a look at the RFP that you mentioned to see what particular aspect of the project was included in your award. But definitely we have had a couple meetings recently, and there's a lot of coordination that needs to be done, but everybody's committed to working towards a good outcome on that.
I'll send you a message, Zoe.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eric. That's all I have.
Thanks so much.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Please have them look at the light on Church Circle at Duke of Gloucester. You sit there forever and nobody goes up. Hardly anybody's coming up Main Street and coming out of Church Circle, and you sit there forever and ever and ever. It needs to be shortened.
All right. Is Kwaku still with us?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, you have some news about your director?
Unfortunately or fortunately, he's leaving, retiring at the end of this month. So there will be a vacuum in the department. Basically, with his absence, there will be only two professionals, one in charge of transit operations, and everything else will be on me. We don't know the city plans in terms of filling the vacancy that will become available. So stay tuned for that. Secondly, I would like to thank John for his presentation. You did mention several things that are kind of striking, especially the low ridership. If you go back to a point in time and look at the changes the city has made to transit services, its relationship to ridership, you can see a very downwards trend. One time, we used to carry about 1.5 million riders, not anymore. So looking at low ridership, we need to understand the context that this has happened over time, particularly with respect to reducing services, increasing fares, and increasing the headways. All have impact on transit, and while they leave, it's almost impossible to bring them back. But we can talk much about that, about the bicycle plans and all those areas that you did hit. Okay. The second thing is that, as you may be aware, the department has submitted its grant application to MTA. The application comes with a package and some forms to fill. If you recall, city council, a city council hearing, there were some issues with electric bus, not electric bus. Currently, the way the grant application is set up, there is no money in there for electric vehicle. However, whatever the city gets, if the city has more money to add to that, it doesn't prevent the city from buying an electric vehicle. We know that the cheapest one we have seen is about $800,000. Basically, the grant for the bus replacement is about, without local share, is about $310,000, which means that we may have to look for additional $500,000 for one electric bus. So,
But Kwaku, is that the full-size 40-foot one?
oh, this is about 35 foot. That is the smallest electric bus currently available. That is certified by FTA to purchase. So that's why we have now, there was a presentation by Pretoria, which actually makes a lot of electric buses, and if you did ask for 30-foot, they don't even have it yet. Okay, we can talk about that later on. The second thing that you may also want to take a look at, the mayor has released its FY 2022 operating budget and the CIP. You may want to take a look at the transportation budget and see what's happening there. You will notice that the total revenue is about 6.2, and out of that, the city is going to depend on about $4 million for grants in order to just keep the department going. So it's at the city website. You may want to take a look at it. I think pages 118 and downwards, you will find a transportation budget. In terms of the expenses, when you're looking at it, remember, in order to get your total expenditure amount, you have to add the grant budget to that. So the grant budget basically what they call grant funded expenditures. So if you're looking at that, you have to bear that in mind, that the grant budget is part of your expenditure budget. So you may want to take another look at that. Okay, what else do I have here? I think that's all that I have for now.
And if you have your regular monthly report, that would be nice. We will add it to the Google Drive.
Yes, I did take a look at that. Basically, for the month of February, it was more of the ridership comparison, and we continue to see the impact of COVID on ridership and also on parking. I believe there will be some budget meetings in City Hall, which will be attended by the various departments. I don't know whether it's virtual and is accessible to the public. You may want
tomorrow's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but tomorrow's transportation presenting to the Finance Committee, and that is from 10 to 1 tomorrow.
Okay, so you may want to tune into that and hear what Director Gordon will have to say. We do provide some interesting statistics in the presentation in terms of impacts of COVID. So you may want to take a look at that. That's all that I have for now.
Thank you, Kwaku. We are at new business. Does any member of the board have new business to bring to the board? Hearing nothing.
I can add just one thing. I was
Yes.
told by BGE that more charging stations are going in at Gorman. I don't remember how many, but it should be pretty soon, like in the next few weeks.
That's wonderful. And by the way, I don't think you had joined yet, but I mentioned the event that you hosted over the weekend, the electric vehicle demonstration, and it was wonderful. I really appreciated being able to go to that.
We had everything from a $16,000 Leaf that was purchased used for that price.
Yeah.
To a $208,000 Porsche.
Well, I'm certainly personally tempted to buy a car, but I don't need one. Mine is working just fine. It's hard to junk one that's cheap and running well.
Just remember the environment.
Yes. All right. Alderwoman Tierney, do you have anything else that you would like to?
No, thank you. No.
Thank you so much for dropping in. You had no transportation committee meeting this month, but I look forward to
No, we
the
didn't
next
have
time.
legislation to review, and I didn't have a plan B, so yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thanks so much. A motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It was very stimulating conversation. We'll see